questions? Yes?
Looking at this screen, inviting and deporting Mexicans, next to 1848, what does that statement mean?
Okay, take the land, not the people. So 1848 is when the Mexican-American War is ended and the United States government signs the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo with Mexico. So in 1846, this is what the United States and Mexico looked like. The United States had already annexed Texas, which was previously part of Mexico. But all of this land, which is California, Nevada, all those states that have Spanish names, was Colorado, Arizona, was all part of Mexico. So in 1848, the victorious United States sits down and Congress has to decide, so where do we want to draw the border? Because the United States occupies Mexico all the way down to Mexico City at the time. So the debate about where to draw the new border between the United States and Mexico is based on this concept of take the land, not the people. We want as much land as possible, especially as much resource-rich, mineral-rich land, but we want as few people as possible. So when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is signed, it includes an offer of citizenship for Mexicans who live in the territory that is now becoming the United States. But once again, look at this map. Who lives in that territory? Mostly Native Americans. A very few Spanish colonizers, who we call Mexicans, they are offered citizenship. Native Americans are not eligible to citizenship. They're not even eligible to citizenship by birth. Citizenship by birth doesn't even exist in 1848, but when it's created, they are explicitly excluded. So the idea is, yes, those Hispanic Mexican people may be white, but they're not really white enough. They're suspect. They might be racially mixed. So we want to draw the line where it will get us the greatest amount of land with the fewest amount of people. So that's what I meant by take the land, not the people. Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, there's a sign selling Native American land of the Narragansett Indians in Matunic, in the Narragansett Museum in Exeter. That same sign for Matunic land.
Yes, I mean, in New England, it happened a little bit earlier, mostly not in the 19th century.
I don't remember the years.
But I mean, that sign could well be from the 19th century. And as we know, native tribes like the Mashpee are still fighting for federal recognition in New England. That is, there were no federally recognized tribes in New England because the federal government, even though the state of Massachusetts had signed treaties with the Mashpee, and I mean, I'm in Massachusetts, so I'm a little more aware of what's going on there than Rhode Island, but even though the state of Massachusetts had signed treaties with the Mashpee, those are not recognized by the federal government, so they're not a federally recognized tribe. So that's under dispute right now.
Well, first of all, I noticed going back to the poster you showed, selling the land with the portrait of the... Yeah, it says as a selling point that the land available has been irrigated, and I'm kind of inferring that, okay, we've allowed the native population to tidy up and cultivate the land and make it arable, and now we get rid of them, and look, it's all ready to go for you. It's ready-made.
Most of that is with federally sponsored, creation of federally sponsored irrigation projects and irrigation districts. It's not that it was farmed and irrigated by Native Americans.
Okay. And also, going back again to our early history, you think you could address the relationship between the colonialist drive to grab land and resources and also the drive to spread Christianity? How are they going together?
Absolutely. That is, in the 500 years of European colonialism, the Bible and the gun have always gone together.
Still do.
So yes, missionary activity. The French called it the mission civilisatrice, that European rule is going to civilize and uplift the people who they are colonizing because Europeans are so superior and their religion is so superior. Definitely. Two sides of the same coin.
But even after such conversion, they still couldn't become citizens.
No. But I mean, so, this, I talk about this a little bit in the book, this is problematic. That is, it requires constant revision on the part of European ideologies to justify, so that what begins in the 1400s and 1500s as primarily a religious justification shifts over time to be primarily a racial justification, especially by the 1700s, 1800s. There's the sort of scientization of race as race is turned into a justification for European domination.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think the OU Sooners derived their name from that Homestead Act. And that the rule was the sooner you get there, the sooner you get to claim your land. I could have that wrong. But
I'm not familiar with that, but
it's something like that.
yes, in the back. Yeah.
I feel like I've learned a lot this evening, some of which I'm kind of sad about. And I'm thinking there are millions of Americans who are going to be voting in the next presidential election, in which this topic is going to be a highly motivating factor. Whether or not enough people of Spanish, Hispanic ancestry who are now citizens will be sufficient to carry certain states in the next presidential election. The vast majority of Americans don't know this history, they don't think about it, and yet there's something about it that motivates them powerfully. What is that?
That motivates people to want
To have strong feelings.
to be anti-immigrant.
Yeah.
What is it that motivates them?
Fear.
I feel like, so, I mean, you said it yourself. Most people don't learn this history. Most people learn that this is a country that has always welcomed immigrants and this is what makes us so special. Now, the problem with that is that leads to, but we're running out of resources and we don't have enough for ourselves, so we can't keep welcoming immigrants. Like, yeah, we did it in the past and that was nice, but now we don't have enough to go around, and why should we be supporting everyone in the world? So, I mean, I think you kind of answered your own question. That is, partly it's the fact that we don't know our own history that allows us to be so self-righteous about our anti-immigrant sentiments, and not understanding that, I said that so religion was replaced by race as a justification. And I would say that we're in a period now, especially after 1965, where race is being replaced by criminalization. Race is being replaced by nationality. That is, we say we don't discriminate, but just like when we said all and didn't really mean all, now we say we don't discriminate, but we don't really mean that we don't discriminate. We mean we don't discriminate against anyone who's a citizen. So, but we do discriminate against people who aren't citizens. But if we understand the racial history of citizenship, then we can see that that we're still being dishonest with ourselves.
Is the 20,000 still the same now, or has that changed as far as legal immigration?
That's the basis. So every year there's certain adjustments that are made by Congress. So it's not exactly like that every year, but the Hart-Celler is the foundation of our immigration law. So basically, yes, but you'll see one year it's going to be 22,000, and the numbers of refugees who are admitted, and there's people who are admitted outside that 20,000. So there's thousands of pages of immigration law, but this is sort of the foundation.
And they still allow that? I mean, seriously, I'm asking, I'm not thinking.
Yeah. Well, that's the quota. That doesn't mean that everybody who applies is going to be approved. And as I said, there's people who are allowed in outside of that quota system.
But those are probably white people that are allowed outside of that quota.
Well, there's a whole separate system for refugees that also have their own quotas, and those are established by country. So this country gets 5,000 refugees, this country gets 100 refugees. So again, I mean, immigration law it's an enormous body of law that's extremely complex. So like I way oversimplify it here to...
The reason why I ask is I tend to doubt that this current administration is even abiding by the immigration laws that are in place, except
the law, the 20,000 is a cap. It doesn't say that the United States has to grant 20,000 a year. That's the cap.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking about this that that settler colonialism seems to be happening on a small scale in cities which are suffering from gentrification. That we move into an area, we take over, we push out the natives in a sense. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking that it's related. Seems related to gentrification in cities and towns in America, and in Rhode Island especially, where we see a place we want, we move in, and then we try to force out the people who live there, and we bring in other people like us. And I think that's an ongoing process even today.
It's a really powerful concept for understanding American history. I feel like it makes us see so many things differently if we can use that concept as a tool.
Right.
Just wanted to back up to Ralph's question, and sort of the core of Ralph's question as I heard it was, why is this such a motivating factor for such a large segment of the voting population? And I was thinking also, you started by saying most Americans don't know this history. I would say most people in this room didn't know this way of looking at the history before we were here tonight. And
10 years ago, I didn't know this history either.
But I was thinking that and so another factor in this being such a motivating factor for such a large segment of the voting population is that not only is this information not available to them, but the sources of information of which they do avail themselves are using this as essentially a propaganda tool to direct their political allegiances.
Absolutely. I was just thinking as you were speaking, why do we buy Coca-Cola when we know it's bad for us? Why do we smoke cigarettes when we know they're bad for us? Because we're subject to relentless propaganda, and because they're addictive. And anger is addictive too.
I learned an enormous amount. I thought I knew a lot about our history. This was fabulous. I wonder if you have a solution, a thought, an idea, what to do, how to fix the system, any of those ideas to share with us?
So, I mean, I can answer that in 3 ways. One, is like to fix the system, we have to create a critical mass of people who want to fix the system, and that has to do with education. 2 is as I said, immigration law is extraordinarily complex and it changes every day. But we are right now witnessing the implementation of many extremely repressive, discriminatory, noxious new policies. So I would say in terms of what do we have to do right now, it's defensive measures. We have to try to hold up some of the things that are being implemented right now. But that's not enough, because we also have to propose a vision of what should a just planet look like. And notice that I didn't say what should immigration law look like. I said what should a just planet look like. Because I think another really important factor here is that the vast majority of people who are coming to the United States today would much rather stay home. There may be a few out there who just think it would be a lark and fun, or they get a scholarship and they want to come study in the United States, or they get a really great job offer. That is not the vast majority of immigrants. The vast majority of immigrants would give anything if they could stay home in their communities, with their families, with their loved ones, their parents who are forced to leave their children who are forced to leave their parents. People do not immigrate, most people do not immigrate just because they think it would be fun. They immigrate because they're desperate. So the problem of immigration is not, our immigration laws make desperate people's lives even worse. But the solution isn't just to change our immigration laws. It's to think about the root causes of immigration, which, this would have been another talk, but a lot of them have a lot to do with our country's foreign policies. So we really can't separate foreign policy, trade policy, military interventions, economic policy, development models from what's basically a forced migration of refugees.
And also climate change now.
And also climate change, which I guess I would say is both foreign and domestic policy, caused by foreign and domestic policy of the United States.
So I've been studying this for maybe less than a year, and I thought I was beginning to get my head around it, and you kind of blew a bunch of new holes into my understanding of it, which I'm grateful
Sorry.
for. No, I'm grateful. And the more you do that, the more I understand, the more it's clear that the motives, racism, profit. And I guess my question is, as a historian, yes, we need to change going forward what happens. Can you speak to reparations or that sort of thing about anything else we can do right now? Or do you feel like it's entirely defensive?
Well, so somebody mentioned that this is a sanctuary church. So there are many things that people can do right now. There are organizations that leave water in the desert. There are legal aid organizations that try to provide legal support for immigrants. There are sanctuary churches. There's many, many initiatives going on all around the country. There's not, we need everything. We need all hands on deck doing everything.
Thank you.
I have a question. So Native Americans are citizens today?
Yes, 1924, that was changed. So Native Americans became eligible for citizenship by birth.
I'd just like to, explaining the intensity of the passion of people today whose ancestors were immigrants against current immigrants, just bring up the notion of cognitive dissonance. You have people in Rhode Island that say, who hate what these immigrants are doing, but their own grandparents did it. So they have to resolve this problem. And of course what they say is, well, my people came legally. My people came legally. My people came, my father and mother, before 1924. And the vast majority of these people couldn't come here legally because it wasn't illegal to come from Europe. So they, but for people to face that and to see that their reasoning is all wrong and that people don't like it. And so they protect themselves by building this wall. Those are the bad guys. They're illegal. It's very hard to change.
But I think that assertion of my ancestors came here legally is also profoundly racist. Like if you, it's a form perhaps of colorblind racism, a way of defending white privilege without actually talking about race.
Thank you. You've given us a lot of really wonderful information, which I appreciate. And I want to bring up the name that has not yet have emerged, and that's the name Trump.
Oh, it was in my title.
I'd like to bring that up, but I'd like to say that, generally speaking, I'm opposed to all of Trump's policies. But one of the problems I have is the problem that I hope you as a historian can help me with. That is, what are the 4 or 5 myths of Trump's immigration policy which we should all know so that we can argue logically and intelligently against it? What are the 4 or 5 main ideas that are permeating our culture today which we and I need to be informed about and which we need to be able to challenge in terms of what you've just explained? It's like linking the dots.
Well, immigrants are criminals, right? He's constantly making insinuations that try to point us in that direction. Immigrants take American jobs. Immigrants don't pay taxes. Immigrants come here just to abuse the welfare system while they're taking people's jobs, apparently.
Can you back up the taxes? They do pay taxes, but they can't get refunds.
Yes.
It's a double win.
So just to talk about taxes for a minute, there's many different types of taxes that we all pay. So you basically pay a tax every time you engage in a transaction, whether it's a sales tax or property tax. Anybody who engages in any kind of transactions is paying taxes of some sort. When people say that immigrants don't pay taxes, they're generally referring to payroll taxes, like state and federal income taxes, unemployment insurance, everything that's deducted from your payroll, from your paycheck, if you are employed in the formal labor market. Now, there are citizens who do not work in the formal labor market, and there are immigrants, documented and undocumented, who do work in the formal labor market. Anybody who works in the informal labor market, that is, if I provide some service to you or you provide some service to me and we just pay each other and neither of us declares it, I don't pay, if I hire you to do my index for my book, I'm not actually going to pay Social Security and workers' compensation and all those things. And if you get injured while you're working on my index, you're out of luck. Like, you're not going to be covered. I'm not paying for it. So that's like the informal market. Now, if you're the indexer, maybe you're okay with that, but most people who work in the informal labor market work in dangerous occupations and are paid sometimes under minimum wage. So the informal labor market generally works to the benefit of employers who don't have to pay taxes and to the detriment of employees who have no recourse, who are not protected by the same workers' rights that I am protected by having a job in the formal labor market, being a professor at Salem State. So whether you're a citizen, a documented, undocumented immigrant, anybody who works in the informal labor market is not having those payroll deductions, and neither is their employer. And they're not protected. Many undocumented immigrants work in the formal labor market. That is, they get paychecks. And they do it by using a false social security number. And that's what you were referring to there. Using a false social security number is very, very different from identity theft. Identity theft is when you use somebody else's identity to get something, like to get money out of their bank account or to use their credit card to get something from them. Using a false social security number is a completely victimless crime. What it means is that all of those taxes are deducted from your paycheck, but you're not eligible for any of the services because you're not really the person whose name is on the social security card. It's a false number. So it's a completely victimless crime, but it's a crime that has beneficiaries, and the beneficiaries are all of us in the formal labor market, because undocumented immigrants contribute billions of dollars every year to Social Security by working with false Social Security numbers. They are sustaining our Social Security system. So anybody who currently or in the future plans to get Social Security, you can thank all those undocumented immigrants who are using false Social Security cards.
Would you continue your list? Because I think this is the core of what we can take away from today. What are the things we need to know?
I think those are the main ones.
Well, I've got, they pay taxes, they jobs, taxes, and, okay, that's what I got, jobs and taxes. Are there other myths?
I already mentioned some others. Well, my ancestors came here legally. I think it's a really important myth. I mean, I do have my book of 21 myths over there, so.
You're giving us things we can take away. This is important. I'm sorry.
I want to take a few more questions.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
What's your take on the hot button issue of permitting aliens, foreigners, undocumented, to get a driver's license?
Can't you guess? I don't think that anybody should be discriminated against for any reason. And I think that creating a document that is selectively given to some people and not other people, and then justifying discrimination against the people who were selectively refused the document is as arbitrary a form of discrimination as any other. So therefore, I think if we have driver's licenses, which I think that we should, I think that a driver's license is a good thing. I think that you should have to take a test before you can drive, and I think everybody should be eligible to take that test, and anybody who passes it should get a driver's license. All. When I say all, I mean all. No exceptions.
Could you talk just a little bit about the question about adding a question to the census about citizenship, and if the Supreme Court goes the wrong way, what would be the response?
So the worry, the question is about adding a question on citizenship to the census. So the concern about adding that question is that people who are undocumented or who have family members who are undocumented are going to be afraid to return a census at all. Now the census is really important for localities, and many immigrants live in poor cities, right? That must be true in Rhode Island too. Central Falls. So the population statistics that come out of the census that tell us how many people are living in each locality are used for the distribution of federal aid to states, to cities and towns. They're also used for calculating representation in Congress. They're used for many things that make it really important to have accurate counts. Now, in part, it has been seen as a Republican move because immigrants tend to live in areas that are more heavily Democratic. So if you can take representatives away from the areas where immigrants live, then you're getting fewer Democrats elected and more Republicans elected. Now, of course, immigrants who are undocumented can't vote, but they may have family members who are citizens who can vote, but who are afraid to answer the census.
It's an intimidation factor.
It's an intimidation factor. So, that question should not be there. And if it is there, what's going to happen is we're going to have undercounts in areas where immigrants are a significant portion of the population, and that's going to have an effect on electoral districts, and it's going to have an effect on federal aid.
So, if the question is there on the census, do you have any, are people who are thinking about this, are there things that we can do to somehow make it better?
Well, there are organizations that are working on this. I can't tell you the names of any organizations, but if you go online, you can look them up. There are so many organizations. So one of the things I have to say that's kind of heartening about the Trump administration is I feel like there has been a real mobilization among people who maybe just like listen to Barack Obama say, we're a country who've always welcomed immigrants, and can kind of sit back and think, oh yeah, we're good people, so we feel good, and not have to do anything. A lot of those people now are saying, oh, we need to do something. So the mobilization of people who might not have been mobilized before, I think is one of the rays of hope we see in the current political climate. So there's definitely organizations out there.
Yeah, I'm belaboring this. I guess I'm just puzzled about whether it's, what is actually the best thing to do? Do you encourage people to say that they're, to actually answer the question?
So, immigrant rights organizations have worked very hard in the last 2 decennial censuses to make sure that immigrants fill out the form. So going door to door in immigrant neighborhoods, telling people that it's safe. Now we aren't really sure it's safe. Like a lot of things that were safe, we don't know if they're safe anymore. So again, you need to look at local organizations and what they're doing.
I just kind of thought about that I was thinking, what if we could get everybody who's filling out the census to not answer that question, and then we put the word out to the immigrant communities that we're not going to answer the question. If they don't answer the question, like nobody's going to know.
I had thought that,
I don't know if that would be useful.
Does that result that you get less money in your local community because nobody is willing to answer?
So, we're all talking about hypotheticals right now because we don't even know if this is going to happen or not. So I wouldn't waste too much time worrying about it. But I can guarantee you that if it does pass, there's going to be immigrant rights organizations. I don't think we should just sort of randomly say, oh, we should do this, we should do that. There's organizations that have been talking about this and will have plans. So go to your organizations, don't just speculate.
Well, some of us a couple months ago were demonstrating in Central Falls because the Wyatt prison in Central Falls is a prison for profit, and it was kind of like a settler move into a poor town. I realize that because Detention Watch had a talk at Brown about how they look for places where they promise, we are job creators and you are poor. You should be really happy to get this. Even the Providence Journal had an editorial saying basically Central Falls is poor, what right do they have to complain about the ICE prison in the middle of their city? So it's like, and most of the prisoners in there, I think this has been going on for years and people just weren't paying attention, are just not immigrants, they're Americans being shipped around the prison for profit. but it's really horrible. I don't know how that's going to sort out because the shareholders profiting from the prison are putting awful pressure on the city of Central Falls, threatening to totally like wipe them out financially if they don't submit it. So,
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I feel like, you know, the really big roots of this issue have to do with our economic system, they have to do with our foreign policy, they have to do with really big issues. So, I mean, we need to be able to think on different levels at the same time, on multiple levels at the same time. So what are some of the immediate things we want to do to create more justice in our surroundings? And what are some of the bigger long-term things that we want to work on to create a more just planet that we may not see in our lifetimes, but that we still are things that we feel morally compelled to work for? So maybe I'll take one more question. Is there anyone who hasn't asked a question yet who wanted to ask the last one?
This talk was great, thank you. There was a mention, and you kind of alluded to this around the time, that it would take to talk about cause in terms of economics and that type of thing. So that part outside of the history, I think, is just understanding like what do you do beyond education, because education is fantastic, but then it's this call to action, you know, from there, like could you speak or maybe even point in the direction of something to reference around this global kind of push, because it seems it's not isolated to the United States. This is happening everywhere. There's just economic oppression that is crushing. And it's core to corruption, it's core to hoarding, it's core to climate, it's core to all of these things. And there's just seems to be more, especially like I think in younger generations too, there's just like sense of we have to do something. The people that are in control right now are just being so irresponsible and so selfish. And like, you know, where do you, I don't know, it's like where do you start from a resource perspective?
You start from your local organizations, and I can't really tell you what they are here in Rhode Island. I could tell you what they are in Boston, but I can't really tell you what they are here.
Boston's not that far away.
Boston's not that far away. There's organizations working on the macro, there's organizations working on the micro.
Like from an economic standpoint, just name a few. Like just, is it kind of like creating, you know, micro bases?
Okay, so two in Boston, the DSA. Democratic Socialists of America are really active right now. I'm sure they have a chapter down here too. In fact, I know they have a chapter down here that are thinking about these sort of big structural economic issues. Another organization in Boston that's focused much more on immigration, but focusing on the roots of immigration and doing education around the roots of immigration at the same time that they're working on specific immigrant rights issues in the Boston area. It's called Centro Presente. So were you going to say something in answer to the question?
Yeah, so a good website to go to is Immigration Advocacy Network, and you can search your state, you can search regionally to find out the names and contact information for local immigration advocacy groups. And it will list the services that they provide and the projects that they're working on. So if you're interested in, you know, being an ally to immigrant groups, that is a really great place to start, so that you can listen to what they have to say and give the bodies and finances to progress some of the things that need to be done.
Can I have
Great, thank you.
That Kathy Alquist and myself and probably others in this room can point you towards organizations here in Providence doing that work.
Great, thank you.
How do we rewrite the history books so kids going through?
They're written, it's just a question of reading them.
It's like all the kids need to have the real history of the United States, not the,
So, thank you so much for coming tonight, Aviva.